Hi everyone. So tonight I'm going to be reviewing Belladonna of Sadness, a very adult animated film, more adult than any ones I have talked about thus far. So if you're under 18, I would very much recommend you leaving this review, please, just to be on the safe side. Okay, so this is an anime film from the 1970s about a woman named Janae and her husband John, and Janae gets raped and it leads her into a downward spiral of tragedy and being judged by her community, and winds up making a deal with a spirit that turns out to be Satan, and she becomes a witch of sorts, and she, I think, brings about the Black Death. It's never really said. I don't get whether she did it or not, and all kinds of crazy visuals are in this movie, which really make the story harder to understand for me, which is a shame because there are some things that are done decently here. The portrayal of the traumatic events is very disturbing in a way that it should have been, and the judgments that Janae faces are similar to how many women have probably felt in their lives, and the judgment of how she would be a witch just by wearing green, and green being a cover of evil. It really shows that it's part of a judgmental and violent society. And yeah, those bits of the film are decent. But the problem is, with all the visuals that are being thrown at you, it's hard to tell what the story is trying to say. There's plenty of things I might have gotten totally wrong when I'm talking about the story for this movie, because that's just how all over the place it is, and with everything that's being thrown. There were many times my friend Duita and I, who was watching this with me, were super confused at what was going on for most of the movie. So, yeah, it's kind of a mess. And I can see why somebody that likes avant-garde movies would enjoy this, but as for me, somebody that likes things with a structured story where I can understand what's going on, this didn't do the trick at all. The animation for this movie, though, is really nice. It looks beautiful and it's unique. There's a lot of times when the characters barely move when they're speaking, and it might dolly left or right. Like, this is the camera, and instead of me moving, it might go like this or this to show the whole way of the scene, which is interesting. And movement is utilized in scenes that are more dramatic, such as Janae levitating from bed at one point, or Jean chasing after Janae when she's about to be executed for her crimes. But that is a really unique way of going about the animation, and it makes the film really stand out. And there's a lot of times when it's a little sketchy, sort of watercolory. My friend compared it to The Tale of the Princess Kaguya, but not exactly. And yeah, that's pretty much a good idea of how to describe it. The animation is undoubtedly beautiful, but even that has problems. There are some great ideas here, movement being done mostly through the characters that are sort of like demons. Like, the spirit is very fluid with movements, and sort of surreal movements, and yeah, that all is great, but the biggest problem with this movie is it constantly throws weird imagery at you, especially like halfway into the film. There's this one sequence where neither of us understood what was happening, and that was a real problem for me because I hate movies where I don't know what's going on. And again, if you like that sort of imagery of things just being thrown at you constantly, then you're gonna love it. But the animation styles, even when they are unique, tend to be very overbearing at other times. Now, finally, on to the characters. These are the hardest to say something about because they focus a lot more on the trauma these characters go through than making defined characters themselves. Starting off Janae. She is a character that's supposed to have a descent into madness after her traumas, and yes, we do see that, and it's handled decently enough. She's layered at both being completely psychotic and not being able to rationalize why anyone would be upset with her, including her husband, while also maintaining a certain tragic element. But at the same time, we have problems here too. Namely that it's hard to really understand her fall when there's one problem. We don't really know about who she was beforehand, which is kind of a problem because if we want to have sympathy for her, we need to know more about her. Yet we sadly don't. John is a very devoted husband and wants to help his wife even after all she goes through and her descending into becoming crazy. But we see so little of him, and it's a shame because he could have given the story a lot more aspect of the themes of anger and hatred that are definitely prominent in this movie. One of the themes I forgot to mention for storyline. But here they work fine. And showing how those feelings, if they're not contained properly and used properly, if you don't express them right, they can wind up hurting those you do love. And that's exactly what happens with Jean, both through seeing his lover in pain and his own demise around the end. I'm not worried about spoilers because you're not going to be understanding what's going on throughout this movie. Trust me. You're not going to understand unless you're so much smarter than me. And you studied animation. And also, I'm really not trying to recommend this movie on storyline instead of just visuals, so I really don't feel there is much of a point as to avoiding the spoilers that I usually do. So anyway, John works as a sort of victim of Janae's, or however you say her name, descent into madness and hatred, but at the same time, we don't see enough of him to really appreciate that. The Satan character, the spirit, whatever, is pretty ominous and still alluring as a Satan character would be. But again, that's about what you'd expect, so nothing really special or making the movie worth watching for him alone. But he's the closest to a character I found interesting in the movie. The biggest problem with this movie is it tries to be very disturbing, and it is, don't get me wrong, it is disturbing, but at the same time, unlike something like Grave of the Fireflies, where we have characters that we can connect to instantly with Seita and Setsuko, and seeing a bit of how they are as people. We don't get them with Janae. You don't know. Oh. See how little I care? And John, for that to really register, it makes you want to turn away, but until the end, I didn't feel for these characters at all, which is a problem when it's trying to be this type of movie. So, it does have some good elements of story with themes that it's willing to bring up. Some nice visuals when it's not being too in your face, and an okay character arc, sort of. But at the same time, it tells us so little of these characters, and it goes so all over the place that I couldn't recommend this movie to anybody other than those who really like psychedelic modern art type movies. For anyone else, I would strongly recommend skipping this movie and going for almost anything else, really. It's not a terrible movie per se, but I definitely won't be watching it again. Thanks for watching this review, and if you have an anime film you want me to review, please leave it in the comment section below. Please don't make it as disturbing and crazy as this one, though. Bye.